What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video, and today Daniel Jeremiah dropped his mock draft 3.0, so I'm going to review it and continue it for a second round. If you are new here, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. You guys know how to use YouTube. Below my face is my board, and below that are all the great ways to get involved in the community, as well as take advantage of our two sponsors of the show, Olipop as well as UnderDog Fantasy. Use those codes. You get up to a match of $100 on Underdog as well. So make some money, spend some money, enjoy some money, save some money, potentially lose it as well. Who cares? As long as you have fun and have a good time, which I do. And I'm not really a great bettor, but that's okay. That's between us. Let's get right into this though, because we actually have to continue the mock draft. We're not just going to be going and scrolling over a page like deep down I want to. But this is my first video after my birthday. Thank you guys so much for all the great wishes. I love y'all to death for that, but obviously you knew that I'd take my foot off the gas pedal just for one day. We are going to be starting a new job ASAP, so literally next week, because I thought it was going to be this week, and then, paperwork. Oh, y'all know the deal. But let's get right into this. Let's have a good time. Starting out with the number 1 overall pick, the Bears go Caleb Williams. He's awesome. I mean, trading away Justin Fields for pennies on the dollar. As a Steelers fan, I am technically a Steelers and a Bears fan, so, either way, I was going to win. But y'all know I'm primarily a Steelers fan. It was a little bit interesting. Obviously, there is rumors that they had a more competitive offer than a conditional 6th in 2025. But, there is, if he plays over 51% of the snaps, it becomes a future 4. So at least they got that conditional in there, and they sent Justin to a place where he very well might be able to start. So I'm just happy for both sides because the drama's over essentially, apart from people just pissed off about the trade value. But, the drama's essentially over. You're going to get your new quarterback of the future. He's a great contributor. I thought it was going to be a second round pick for Justin Fields. I know it hurts, but again, now you have clarity of mind that almost is worth the trade in itself. That's coming from a Steelers fan. So, take with that as you will. Pick number 2, the Commanders go Drake Maye. I'm happy that there's at least some more sentiment that Drake Maye will actually be the second quarterback selected. I just find it very difficult to believe that that these teams believe that Drake Maye is not the second overall quarterback. For me, the second best quarterback right now is Jayden Daniels. I even struggle with my own rankings right now, though, with Drake Maye, because the potential, if they both develop the ceiling, is a bit higher on Drake Maye, because some of those high-end throws that he makes are almost irreplicable by a lot of other talents. And Jayden Daniels does a great job as well. Obviously, he's my QB too, but you are certainly seeing the higher ceiling with Drake Maye. I just think that the inconsistency is what would drive me to put Jayden a little bit above him. Also, the mobility difference. Jayden Daniels is on another planet in terms of his actual mobility, but Drake Maye is no slouch there. The Commanders would be blessed to have a high-end talent like Drake Maye as long as they upgrade that offensive line. They just brought back Cornelius Lucas on a 1-year, $4 million deal. That at least gives you something there to where if you need to take a project tackle, if you need to not get that day one impact, you still are okay. Not great, not good. I mean, I'm pushing it by saying okay, but at least you have something there, because before that signing, that was pretty damn brutal. At pick number 3, the Patriots go Jayden Daniels. I think that the Patriots should at least consider offers for this pick. If you can end up getting 11 and 23, that could end up becoming a star left tackle like Joe Alt, and then, maybe even Brian Thomas or AD Mitchell. I think that would help out the team in the long run, maybe a little bit more than a player like Jayden Daniels, who does have that durability concern. Realistically, that's like the biggest issue with me with Jayden, besides his middle field processing, is his injury concern. The dude is not necessarily big to start out with, but also he has shown to not really take care of himself and avoid contact. And actually, I could say the same about Drake Maye, but Drake Maye has a little bit more meat on his bones. Jayden does not. So I would certainly be considering that Vikings pick if they want to be able to move up for their quarterback. And, there's actually some really good options there at the top of the second that you could end up using some extra capital to move up to the end of the first to get that 5th-year contract. But continuing on, we have the first trade of the mock draft, which, it is actually said that DJ usually waits a very long time to include trades, but this one certainly seems almost written in stone that 11 and 23 will be moved for a pick. And this one is up to pick number 4. The Cardinals end up moving out of Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr. range for an extra first-round pick. So I already know what those picks are going to be. So luckily, I don't get to be like, how dare you, Daniel Jeremiah? How dare you ruin this franchise's chance of getting a really good player? And he also references it here because at pick number 23, y'all will be getting a very solid value on wide receiver that I don't think will actually be there. Hence why I would have some reservations about it. But, we'll talk about those picks when they come out. It just kind of sucks that Arizona does lose out on potentially a upwards towards generational tier wide receiver. However, 2 firsts certainly is a nice consolation prize. So JJ McCarthy goes to the Vikings. They're gearing up for a move up. I think that, it just makes sense at the end of the day that the Vikings are going to be going to this range, and JJ is the 4th best quarterback in the class. I have Bo Nix in that range, but JJ has that it factor that I don't really see with any of the other quarterbacks. So if you're willing and comfortable with your job security, this might end up being the best long-term option after those top 3, potentially even more than Jayden Daniels with those injury concerns. At pick number 5, we have the Chargers trading with the Jets. Now, I assume this is going to be for a future first-round pick because the Jets don't have a second-round pick, so it's not going to affect this mock draft. But that's very, very interesting. I know that DJ actually tweeted out, do I just go full berserk or something like that? He said set the world on fire, and then tweeted out that I assume this is the idea that he was talking about, is this move up right here. And for the Jets, it makes sense because this is their last opportunity. Aaron Rodgers, at the end of the day, is coming off an Achilles injury. I don't know how much longer he's going to last at that rate, but you do have 2 star offensive tackles that are able to play at a very high quality level, not for long, but you have them on 1-year deals. So you're pretty much saying, hey, we need one more weapon, and essentially we are good. And that's exactly what the Jets do here with Marvin Harrison Jr. That trade compensation better be really good for Los Angeles, because for a team bereft of legitimate receiver talent at the moment, no disrespect to Palmer or Quentin Johnston, but, I do have my concerns in terms of their starting ability compared to receivers like Marvin Harrison Jr., Rome Odunze, as well as Malik Neighbors. But Marvin Harrison Jr. would be that final piece. It just depends on the trade compensation. Of course, not going to affect this mock draft because they don't have a second-round pick. Now, at pick number 6, we got the Giants going Malik Neighbors. I have my best friend is an Eagles fan. He hates the idea of this being a possibility, but it's a very high possibility. Malik Neighbors is a game-breaking wide receiver. He is awesome. He's going to be a great addition there. Now, I do think that the Giants should at least be open to moving down if they wanted to end up getting Rome Odunze, which I think Rome Odunze is a tier below Malik Neighbors. I know that DJ probably doesn't think that because he loves Rome Odunze, but I think that the NFL might view Malik Neighbors as that tier 1 with Marvin Harrison Jr., and then Rome Odunze as that tier 2, almost on his own. And I think the Giants, especially for some teams that could be a little bit hungrier for that final piece, i.e. maybe the Bears, even though they should be going after an edge rusher sometime, but maybe the Bears get excited and they want to move up for Malik Neighbors. This is a great opportunity to get that future draft capital or just some extra draft capital this year and get a player that's a little bit built more for the vacancy that you do have. Malik Neighbors' ability to take the top off of defense, he has very solid route running. I feel like that almost overlaps a little too much with Jalen Hyatt's best ability. You're not going to be making Malik Neighbors less valuable, but you're essentially making Jalen Hyatt less valuable. Now, you could have a Legion of Zoom there, and it might end up working out perfectly, hence why I'm comfortable doing it. But if you could end up, getting a good amount of draft capital in a move down, you very well might be able to make up the difference for that talent drop. And you end up getting a player who is going to be a little bit more complementary to the receivers that you have. But Malik Neighbors, incredible. Obviously, I just wanted to throw that idea out there. Would love to hear some feedback on that. Pick 7, Titans go Joe Alt. It's the pick that's set in stone for me. Releasing Andre Dillard makes a lot of sense that they're pretty much aiming to go after Joe Alt at pick number 7. At pick 8, the Falcons go Dallas Turner. I mean, it's another pick that's almost set in stone. The only other position I could assume that they'd go after is corner with Terry and Arnold, but Dallas Turner is just so freaky, and it's a bigger talent drop from Dallas to the edge rushers in round 2 than, Terry into the corners in round 2, and that's coming from a guy who has literally Terry and Arnold at number 3 on his board. At pick number 9, we got the Bears going Rome Odunze. They should be going after an edge rusher, in my opinion, but Rome Odunze is ridiculous if you pair him up with Keenan Allen, DJ Moore. And I think that Rome Odunze doesn't run routes apart from the red zone. I don't know why he just becomes a supreme monster in the red zone, but he doesn't run routes as well as I think maybe he gets credit for. And a great mentor for him would be Keenan Allen. This would be his best situation for him to succeed in my opinion, out of almost every, if not all teams. So this is almost a best possible outcome for him. I'd be very excited to see what happens if the Bears end up passing on edge rusher, but the Bears also had an elite defense last year without having a Jared Verse at pick number 9. So very curious to see what happens there. Chargers, this is part of their trade back, go Tali Fuaga. And, again, they're bereft of weapons, but of course that right tackle spot is pretty vacant. I'm not a fan of Pipkins, never have been a fan of Pipkins. He has 2 years left on his deal, so he's essentially going to be released next year. And Fuaga is going to be a massive upgrade. At the very minimum, you can kick him into guard. Your center spot is filled out for the time being with Bozeman as well. So you do have a lot of stopgap players who kind of fill in the needs for the short run. But Tali Fuaga would be a great pick. I think that because you've traded away Keenan Allen, though, I'd be leaning a little bit more towards maybe even going Brock Bowers. I know you brought on 2 free agent tight ends who are, both relatively competitive, but it's a chance to go after a generational player. And at pick 10, it's a little bit more digestible. At pick number 11, the Cardinals go Jared Verse. Trade out and you still get a top-end edge rusher here. I don't know why Zaven Collins is listed as an edge. Like, he's really listed as a D-end on ESPN as an outside linebacker on Our Lads as one of those pass rushers. I don't think that's a very smart move. Hello, thanks. I'm so glad that my ad blocker is up to date. Don't let NFL.com see that. But I think that Jared Verse is going to be a massive upgrade across from BJ Ojulari. I would be, I don't think Zaven Collins should just be a pure edge rusher. I think that's a big waste of his talent. But I think they're just trying to make the most out of his talent for the time being because he hasn't been really elite as a pure linebacker. But I think that he should be focused a little bit more on the pure off ball, especially if they get Jared Verse to pair up with BJ Ojulari. Then we got the Broncos going Brock Bowers here. This is a perfect situation, in my opinion, for a lot of teams that are going to be looking for an elite corner to be able to move up. Broncos lack that second round pick. I know that some people say they will be actually more aggressive than conservative, so they'd probably move up over move back. I don't really like teams that have a lot of ground to cover to actually compete, giving up even more draft capital. I think that's, fiscally irresponsible, but, Broncos going after a player who is essentially generational is honestly a very good idea. The Broncos might not need tight end as much as we might think they do, but when you have a team that's really rebuilding, this is a building block, and this is something that you're going to build your team around is Brock Bowers. So he's a really solid blocker, especially for his size, and he's a really good route runner. He's dealing with a tweaked hamstring right now, so it sucks not to get a 40 on him, but who cares? He's a generational level prospect, and, it's somebody who I have a lot of respect for. At pick number 13, we got the Raiders going Michael Penix Jr. It's a little bit early for my taste for Michael Penix Jr. He's a really solid quarterback, but for a team like the Raiders where they are kind of capped on the ceiling of their quarterback play, I feel like they're trying to. I think they're comfortable with their job security, like Telesco and AP, and I think they're going to try to build the best team first before dropping their QB in. Michael Penix with 4 season-ending injuries certainly scares the shit out of me, even though medicals might have cleared out and. There have been players like, who was it? I think Frank Gore had like 3 ACL tears before going to the NFL. Like, there are guys who obviously come back against that and, are able to play for a very long time, even with that riddled injury past. And Nick Chubb as well, if I'm not mistaken, had a broken leg there at Georgia, or maybe a torn ACL. Broke his leg recently. but there are guys who are able to compete very, very well even after all those injuries. Michael Penix, I'm hoping, is that case as well, but I am just still a little bit worried about it when, this team certainly has some other issues to fill because they are kind of in win now mode almost with Christian Wilkins, but you have him on a longer term contract. So I think you're comfortable allowing him to get one more year under him before dropping in another QB. At pick 14, the Saints go Olu Fashanu. The Trevor Penning project is over. I hope that they have the balls to do this because that shows a lot of accountability. And Trevor Penning should be almost kicked into guard just because he is a mauler. He just never played well as a tackle. I wasn't a fan of him as a tackle, but Olu Fashanu, to be fair, is almost opposite of Trevor Penning. He is an elite pass blocker with really solid footwork, a great athlete, and Trevor Penning was a great athlete. That's not the opposite part, but essentially the stylistic form of Fashanu not being a pure run blocking finisher, but being more of a pass blocking technician versus Trevor Penning, who's like literally the exact opposite. Would be interesting to see that tense shift in the overall offense, but Olu Fashanu is a great player. He's super young, still developing. Big issue is his run blocking control, which small hands certainly seems to be the issue, which is why I am still a little bit concerned. I'm redoing my offensive tackle evals this week, so very excited for that. Pick number 15, Colts go Quinion Mitchell. If he falls here, it's going to be incredible. He's a top-end ball. He's top-end in terms of ball skills, great in terms of his athleticism. Those are two aspects that you're pretty desperate to have on a corner because a lot of times these wide receivers are elite technicians and can generate separation even on the best corners. So being able to have that recovery speed and then being able to understand where the ball is going to be and having the length and the overall IQ to get there, that's going to be a big factor. And I think Quinion Mitchell will be a great fit for the Colts, especially if he is there. I just doubt that he will be. At 16, Seahawks go Fautanu, going to be pairing up with his OC from Washington. I think this is the right move. I think the Seahawks should move down just a little bit and then draft him. But, that's just me. That's just me. I think Fautanu is going to be a great addition to the Seahawks. I just want to be able to get as much draft capital as possible and still get the player that I'd want. Jacksonville Jaguars then go Terrion Arnold. Terrion Arnold is my number 3 player in the class. I can finally scroll down a little bit so you guys get to see a little bit more. I think that his IQ is cerebral. I obviously had Joey Porter Jr. as my number 2 player last year. To me, Terrion's play style is almost like a miniature Joey Porter Jr. And, grade-wise, they are very, very similar. I love Terrion's flexibility, and the thing I love most about him is his overall IQ. Like, he really is so smart. Like, just processes the game well, but off the field as well. Looks like a genuine asset to a locker room. So, big fan about that. Pick number 18, Cincinnati Bengals go J.C. Latham. I think Latham is going to be one of the guys who's a little bit more day one ready out of him and Mims because Mims has shown that he needs to get back to 100%. And I don't think he's taken the proper time and care to get back to where he needs to be. But that's secretly down. Yes, maybe there's a little bit of a Steelers bias and hoping that I could end up pairing him back up with Broderick Jones. But there is certainly a concern if this guy can't stay healthy because the best ability is availability. I don't care if I have like the best tackle duo for 6 games out of the year. There's another 11 that you need to play before even the damn playoffs. So, those 6 games aren't going to make the difference when you're pretty much playing with backup tackle for the majority of the season. So fingers crossed that I'm wrong about that because y'all see Amarius Mims is still above JC and Latham on my board, but there is some genuine concern there. I think JC Latham is a little bit more reliable. So Cincinnati Bengals get a good one right there. 19, Rams go Latu, edge rusher out of UCLA. He's such a fluid athlete. I'm a big fan of it. I just don't think he generates enough power from his lower body. That's my only issue with him. He has short arms, whoop-de-doo. He's actually really good from a stand-up position. I think he's Aiden Hutchinson minus the leg power. And some people will think that's worth pick number 32. Some people will think it's pick number 2 worthy. So that's just totally up to you. I'm a little bit more on that pick 32 realm because those short arms, I would really like to see that lower body strength be able to push back NFL tier offensive linemen. Because if you can't win with your technical ability, since you're being outranged, you need to have some sort of other physical advantage. And I don't exactly see that except for the flexibility, but I still think he can easily work out. He'd be a great pairing there with Byron Young. So pick number 20, the Steelers go after Tyler Guyton over Amarius Mims. Guyton still has a lot to learn. I love his tenacity. I would want this to be part of a trade back, but he is a really talented player, and I think he would be obviously an upgrade over whatever the hell else we'd have. Obviously, if we didn't take him, Broderick Jones would probably stay right tackle, Dan Moore left. Tyler Guyton at least would probably start halfway into the season. I think that Dan Moore would be the starter for half of the year until Tyler Guyton's ready to go, which, at the end of the day, it's an upgrade. You have another 4 years after that, and, as long as we get an upgrade, that's all that matters. And I'd love to see the Steelers start to reinvest in the offensive line, and you're starting to see how we're winning games even with mediocre-ass quarterback play. And that's because when you win the battle of the trenches or start to win it, your team has a lot better of a time going up against defenses because randomly you don't have to worry about losing from the beginning of the play. And I love that to death. Continue to invest in the offensive line. Tyler Guyton wouldn't be a bad move at all. Obviously, Amari Smith would be the better storyline, but Tyler Guyton has been a little bit more reliable. Pick number 21, the Dolphins go Graham Barton over JPJ. So very interesting about that, but the Dolphins do value that flexibility. Graham Barton's been a left tackle. He's literally played every damn position. So, I wouldn't be angry if this were the pick. Obviously, I have, where's he on my board? Number 33, Jackson Powers Johnson. So I have him a little bit higher than Graham Barton, but I don't think this is bad at all. Not a bad move by any stretch. I just love the idea of having JPJ, who is a Dolphins fan, if I'm not mistaken, going to the Dolphins. It's just perfect storyline. Nate Wiggins then goes to the Philadelphia Eagles. Nate is my number 37 player on my board, which you guys only get to see up to 35, but he is right there at 37. He's a very talented player. He's up to 182, so, randomly he didn't run. I mean, I know he tweaked his hamstring. Like, there's just how many, or maybe he might have tweaked his groin. It was one of the two. He tweaked his leg after that amazing 40. But dude randomly gains 10 pounds and then doesn't test in that, but tests in everything else. So, I think that he actually plays around 4.35, which is still great. But at the same time, in that lower 180 range, I am semi-concerned. Same thing with Ennis Rakestraw here. I mean, I'm still concerned with him as well, and he is subject to fall. But we will definitely see as time progresses. Nate Wiggins could play in that slot immediately for Philly. He is one of the best coverage corners in the class, if not the best. So I'm a big fan of Nate overall. He's a great player. I just really want him to be a little bit more physical and be a little bit more assisting in the run game, because I just don't really think he does a great job at that. He doesn't like to go into the box. Once it's outside the tackles, he actually is pretty damn solid in run support. But one of my biggest issues with Nate, and I brought this up before, there were a lot of times on reps where he'd actually anticipate the play perfectly, and he almost basks in his own glory for a second and just stops playing. And then the receiver would gain separation, and then he snaps back and then reacts. It's incredible. He almost knows exactly what's going to happen, and then gets so caught up in his own self-gratification that he lets the play continue to develop without him being mentally present there. Super duper nitpicky, but it could be the difference in the NFL with receivers that are extremely agile, extremely explosive, to be able to gain enough separation to end up making plays. Because that did even happen versus Xavier Leggett. There were plays where Nate Wiggins would do the perfect play, and then Xavier would continue playing through the whistle, and he would end up getting targeted and get a catch. So definitely a concern there, but Nate Wiggins would be a fine addition to the Eagles. Somebody I know Marina is going to continue bringing up how he'd be corner 5 on the Eagles. The thing about the Eagles is they have the best backup corners in the NFL. A lot of these guys are semi, if not starter quality. If you want to win a Super Bowl, you need an all-pro capable corner, and you just don't have that anymore. You need to go after someone like Nate Wiggins, Terrion Arnold, Quinion Mitchell, who truly have that ability to transcend a starting caliber corner and lock down the best of the best. Because at the end of the day, you're going to be going up against Patrick Mahomes. You're going to be most likely just going up against Patrick Mahomes. But you're going to need to go up against guys like Brandon Ayuk as well in the playoffs. So you need to be able to have someone who locks down an all-pro receiver, and that's not going to be just a starting quality corner. Pick number 23, the Cardinals go Brian Thomas Jr., so this was part of that trade back. Ending up getting Jared Verse and Brian Thomas Jr. ain't too shabby at all, and then we'll see what they do with that third pick, because I do like how this ended up going for the Cardinals. Cowboys then go Jackson Powers Johnson. So obviously a big fan of that one. JPJ going to the Cowboys feels perfect. I think if you swapped this and Graham Barton, I'd be perfectly fine with it as well. I honestly would probably like that more just because the JPJ to Miami storyline. Packers then end up going after Amarius Mims. So Bakhtiari's gone. You have 2 years left in the contracts of, I believe, both Zach Tom as well as Rasheed Walker, because Zach Tom was a later round pick. But Amarius Mims would essentially be a developmental player, needs to be able to get healthy, and you're taking a chance on him being supremely special. I think it's worth it at 25. But Cooper DeJean's there, and deep down, I want to pair him back up with Lucas Van Ness, and I think that whole entire squad could be absolute god tier. I'm perfectly fine with this. Sometimes I like the Cooper DeJean to Green Bay pick. So it's very nice to get a new fresh breath of fresh air. There you go. And Amarius Mims actually not a bad choice because the Packers have very little needs. I know people like to disagree with that, but they really don't have that many needs compared to other rosters. And so you can take a luxury pick and go best player available like Amarius Mims. At pick 26, the Buccaneers go Darius Robinson. The only thing I have an issue with here is talk about athleticism when he ran in the 4.9s. I know it's not the only signifier of athleticism, and I think Darius Robinson, for his size, is athletic. I think that my only issue is that if you're looking for a 270 plus pound edge rusher who brings physicality, versatility, and athleticism, I honestly feel like Marshawn Kneeland is the more underrated option that fits the exact profile that people think Darius Robinson does. So I do think that could be the sleeper pick for round 1, but Darius Robinson brings versatility because he was interior as well as played edge rusher, and he does bring a lot of power. He was a great player at the Senior Bowl, technically Marshawn Kneeland was there too. So Darius Robinson outshined him. He's a great player, 35-inch arms as well. I don't think the Buccaneers would do a bad job at all by selecting him. I don't know. Yaya Diaby doesn't seem like the pairing I'd want with Darius Robinson. I don't feel like they are the duo that I would personally want. I think they play very different roles. So maybe they are complementary, but I'd have to see it in practice a little bit more to get fully comfortable with it. Because Darius is a great player. I mean, he's somewhere on my board. Somewhere. But I'm a big fan of him. He's going to be one of my top 64 prospects. So I'm a big fan of it. Pick 27, you got the Cardinals going Byron Murphy. He is literally my top 13 product on my board. So if you end up sending him to a team that's pretty damn desperate for defensive tier help, that is going to be a dream. Bills getting Jer'Zhan Newton. There actually is news out that people say he's hard to coach. You know why I know that? Because he tweeted out, he's like, I don't know who told somebody that I was hard to coach. So he confirmed that's why NFL teams are starting to drop him, because apparently he's hard to coach. Of course, there are some really good players in the NFL that have been labeled as hard to coach, and good teams end up profiting off of that being incorrect. But also some teams end up not profiting because that ends up being correct. So hopefully Jer'Zhan Newton doesn't end up being a little bit too hard to coach. He does seem a little bit energetic, rambunctious. I don't know how to properly describe it, but he definitely seems extremely active social media wise. It might lean a little bit more towards the fact that this guy does have some sort of ego, which, again, super nitpicky. Like, I personally love Jer'Zhan Newton. He's a top 20 player on my board. But if you really want to start digging into maybe the reasons why NFL offices might be a little bit uncomfortable with him, like, he didn't go to the Senior Bowl. I don't fully understand that one. I could be completely wrong as to why he didn't go. But you also see him doing a lot of self-promotion online, and he seems to continue to say, I am the best, which is a good mentality to have up to a certain point when people start questioning your work ethic. So hopefully that's completely wrong. I do love Jer'Zhan Newton. His play is phenomenal. The Bills will be getting a good one. I'm just praying to God, since now we know the real issue, that the issue is incorrect. Lions go Kool-Aid McKinstry. I didn't even think about this. I love the pairing with Brian Branch. They just traded a 3rd-round pick for Carlton Davis, and McKinstry Davis would be an elite duo. Then obviously you have Cam Sutton there as well for another year. Emmanuel Mosley. I would never be against this pick. I've skipped it because I thought with Carlton Davis, you're going to be shifting your priorities to a Chop Robinson, but You did bring on Marcus Davenport as well. If he can stay healthy, this is a dude who has 9 to 10 sack potential. So maybe Chop Robinson, not the guy you're wanting to exactly go after. I love this pairing though, regardless of the Chop Robinson effect. McKinstry back with Branch would be awesome. Pick 30, you got the Ravens going Cooper DeJean. They always get the best player available, and this is as Baltimore Ravens as it gets. So I'm perfectly fine with that as well. Pick number 31, the Niners go Chop Robinson. They ended up getting Floyd and Yetur Gross-Matos to, I believe, 2-year deals, but Chop Robinson also is not ready to play year one, in my opinion, especially on a championship competitor. So that's why when you see him to the Eagles, it's like the Eagles have too much ground to have to make up in order to fully compete with the Niners, in my opinion. But the Niners are already there, and now you're adding somebody who, in 2 years, you have, essentially 3 years left of an elite edge rusher on a very cheap deal next to probably the most expensive player in the NFL for their own position. Because Nick Bosa he's a pricey dude, but he comes with a lot of talent. So I think it's perfectly fine. Chop Robinson would be honestly one of the better picks here. I personally prefer some corner, but that's because I always believe you can upgrade on offensive tackle and corner. So pick number 32, the Chiefs then go AD Mitchell. It's another pick actually I'd consider for the 49ers just to give the middle finger to KC, because AD Mitchell I would never want to see with Patrick Mahomes. So, this would be quite a nasty duo. AD Mitchell is my number 9 player on my board. I do have a receiver and cornerback rankings video out for you guys to take a peek, but we're continuing it. So we got a lot of picks to go, and we're already 30 minutes in. We're going to try to keep this relatively simple, relatively quick, so that we don't go crazy and lose our minds. For the pick number 33 for the Carolina Panthers, they've already shown their desire for a true X receiver by bringing in Mike Williams on a free agent visit. There's so many variables that go into that, like Mike Williams is going to a billion other teams, to where I'm not going to exactly project that. I'm actually going to go Keon Coleman here out of Florida State. He played the gauntlet drill as fast, if not faster than every other receiver there, showing his play speed, not his actual top end speed, is beyond adequate for the NFL. And that really matters a little bit more than just how fast do you run in a straight line and how good of form do you have in a 40-yard dash drill. Keon Coleman, 6'4", 215 pounds. He's elite tier with his hands. I think he's actually very underrated after the catch. He's never been a separator, never was, never will be. I don't know why people were surprised by the fact that he just stopped separating, because he never was a separator. But I think he's actually a little bit more underrated as a separator / route runner than now people are giving credit for, because the pendulum swinging back. People originally thought this dude was a lock top 15, top 10 pick, and then they got butthurt, so they instantly think that he's, a bust or a bum. And, I actually think it's a bit more close to this side. I'll just give you that. At pick number 34, by the way, we are not going to be doing trades in the second round, so keep that in mind as well. The Patriots ended up going after their star quarterback in round 1 in Jayden Daniels. Let's either weaponize it or help it in terms of protection. And you got Kingsley Suamataia here, flexible at left and right tackle, but right tackle is already filled with Michael Onwenu, which is awesome. You could technically wait and just try to snipe a guy like Patrick Paul, like Karan Amajaje down the board, but I'm tired of sniping dudes. I'm tired. I just want to be able to get a guy who is damn good, who I know is going to start and actually play very, very well. Suamataia and Morgan fit this build to a T. They both have, I forget what Kingsley's arm length is off the top of my head. I know Jordan Morgan's is sub 33. If I'm not mistaken, I think Kingsley's might be as well. But even with that, they both play tackle very well. If you see an issue in terms of them being outlengthened by a lot of defenders, that's when, again, it's similar to hand size with offensive tackles. Once you see an effect be actualized, that's when the size becomes an issue. Pause. But I think that Kingsley has been phenomenal at both left and right tackle. He's had his issues, but those are growing pains this first year, essentially. Jordan Morgan came off an ACL tear, though. But essentially, if injury happens, Kingsley's versatile enough to fill in anywhere, versus Jordan Morgan might have a little bit more issue. You're nitpicking. Again, you're picking between two really good options. So pick number 35 for the Cardinals, essentially have already gotten their wide receiver with Brian Thomas, their edge rusher with Jared Verse, as well as their defensive interior with their star Byron Murphy. So for me, I'm actually going to be looking at corner, because I think this team needs an upgrade at corner. Looking at the options that are best available, my next best corner is Andrew Phillips. I know that I think of him way higher than everybody else on planet Earth, but he is Jair Alexander to me. That being said, he's not the best for a Gannon system in my opinion. I'm going to look at my next best corner in terms of overall IQ, overall instincts, and that's Renardo Green. I think that this team could benefit, to be fair, from going after offensive line here. I think Jordan Morgan actually might be a kick-ass signing because you ended up bringing on Jonah Williams, right? But either Jonah could play guard or you can kick Jordan Morgan to guard. And I think that battle is kind of worth having. So I love Renardo Green. I think it's a great fit, but also this is a cornerback class that is 17 deep to where I start considering it on day 4. So, or day 3, excuse me. So, when you have that much depth in the class, I think you're willing to take a little bit of a creative liberty on Jordan Morgan, also giving a middle finger to Washington inadvertently. But Washington sits here. They got Drake Maye. They should be looking to target an offensive tackle here as well. We could see 3 go back to back to back because Patrick Paul proved to be far more athletic than his tape suggested, which to me shows that he's improved athletically over the offseason. And I love seeing that motivation to become a better athlete and an overall better prospect. So I think this is certainly in play here because it's such a big gap. I know you got Cornelius Lucas for 1 more year. That guy is, serviceable. But do you really want him to be your starter? Let's be honest with each other here. Like, that's not the type of guy who I'm desperate to have. But you could go after an edge rusher here. There's a lot of really talented ones still on the board. I mean, you got Marshawn Kneeland here, who I think is a massive addition to this team. Granted, at pick number 40, I will feel comfortable even selecting a Jonah Ellis or a Marshawn Kneeland or even a Chris Braswell. So I'd prefer to get the comfortable offensive tackle over the uncomfortable edge rusher and pray for an offensive tackle to fall. I think that we'd be better going after our next best options at edge rusher than offensive tackle. Karan is very intriguing, but you'd have to confirm him as a year 1, essentially sit on the bench. 36-inch arms are ridiculous, though. Could make it worth it. I'm going to go Patrick Paul because of the ability to start instantly in case, Wiley or Lucas are just not good enough. So, I think that especially when you invest in Drake Maye, you don't want him to start out his career by getting hurt. And pick 37 for the Los Angeles Chargers ended up bringing on a center, and you got 1-year deal on that. That's great. Ended up trading back and ended up going after, your star tackle in Tali Fawaga. You need to go after wide receiver. You do. And, you got Xavier Legette here. I don't know if I could pass on that. Legette is, 6'1", 220, really solid route runner when he wants to. I think that I just see a little bit too much inconsistency. A++ for his accent. This is a dude who I'd want to hear every single day I come into the locker room, or I hear him come into the locker room, just be like, hello. Some Forrest Gump ass stuff right there. I would be perfectly fine with this. So I'm going to bring him in. I'm going to pair him up with Palmer as well as Johnston. And you're going to have a really, really solid, in terms of physical build, you're going to have a really solid receiving core at 4.39 that adds that vertical ability. And after the catch, this guy was known for running at 22 or not 23 miles per hour. So super excited to see what Xavier Legette can do in the NFL. I picked number 38 for the Tennessee Titans. First round Joe Alt, the easy pick. At this spot, I know that they're pretty heavily in on the L'Jarius Sneed talk. This is where I feel comfortable going after a DB. Of course, you can always wait till the 3rd round because these DBs are damn good, right? You can get an Andrew Phillips in round 3. A Max Melton, you're not going to get in round 3. But even Ennis Rakestraw, there's so many guys that are very variable on where they're going to go because at the end of the day, it's not just a draft of corners. There's a lot of other positions to draft. So you could potentially wait and see what happens there. Now, wide receiver, you already addressed with Calvin Ridley, but you could try to upgrade it more. I'm not going to. I think this is just the prime opportunity. Man, that DB spot is just really calling my name. We're going to have to do it. We're going to go DB. I think the value is right. And his Rakestraw is awesome. I'm going to go after Renardo Green because of the physicality and the overall zone instincts. I think he's phenomenal. I think it's a great fit. You also keep him relatively south. I know that Nashville's not necessarily Florida, but At least I prefer to be taking someone who's known to be able to handle the Florida Heat and moving to Nashville than the opposite. Pick number 39 for the Carolina Panthers. They're also a team that's looking for wide receiver and corner. And, Xavier Legette would have been great to pair up with Keon Coleman. That would be ridiculous. And then you also pair up with Deontay Johnson, like, hello. But we've already addressed that wide receiver spot. I think that we could take a peek at linebacker here and get the best one, Edgerrin Cooper, use him as a hybrid edge rusher. And I think edge rusher certainly is still on the board for this team. If you ended up seeing some edge rush talent really be there at pick 33, certainly is on the board as well. But the Panthers have looked pretty extensively into getting free agency to fill that need so that they can go best player available. Now, we've already gone after that wide receiver spot. I think one of the spots that is very underrated is this cornerback position. And you got Andrew Phillips and Ennis Rakestraw. Those are the two guys who I really like for this squad. Actually, Max Melton would be great as well to replace Dante Jackson. And I'm going to go Ennis Rakestraw, and here's why. He might have ran an unimpressive 40, but you have to look at play speed as well. He was someone who I thought was one of the fastest players that I've seen in terms of his overall play speed. He's able to keep up with Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, etc. He said he was hurt at the combine, which is why I'm still holding out some hope there. But he was able to hold off Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas very well. He was able to play against Georgia with Ladd McConkey extremely well. When I get to see players genuinely perform well against elite prospects, I think that translates. So that's why I still believe in Ennis Rakestraw. The athletic ability might be in question because of the statistics, but he passes the eye test, and he's just super versatile, can play in the slot, and just somebody you just need to have on your roster. At pick 40 for the Commanders, I know that, y'all could certainly be still looking into the cornerback department, but let's go after that edge rusher. We still kind of need a little bit more juice in that edge rushing department. And looking at the options available, Marshawn Kneeland, I technically have lower than Jonah Ellis, but Jonah Ellis is about 250. Marshawn Kneeland is about 270 and had a better shuttle time than literally Chop Robinson. And he was far superior athletically in terms of agility than Jared Verse by like significant margins. That's worth taking a shot on because his motor is incredible. You get to see him try to track dudes down from across the field. Like, that's a dude you want to have on your roster. At pick 41 for the Green Bay Packers, this is a linebacker all day. And, we've already gone, you could look at safety, but don't waste your pick on a safety in a mid-safety class when you actually have some really good linebackers here in a very poor linebacker class. Take the top guys. Peyton Wilson has injury issues and technically length concerns. Edgerrin Cooper, I think he deserves to be able to go on the line of scrimmage and be able to play almost as an edge rusher as well. Think of a Fangio system. I think Junior Colson really brings what Devondre Campbell ended up having a couple years ago when Devondre was at his peak of his game. So I think Junior Colson's going to bring that energy back. Houston Texans, deep down, I really want to go after Edgerrin Cooper here, but Azeez Al-Shaair is a great linebacker to bring in. And then you also have Christian Harris and HTT. It's understandable. Defensive interior is still a position I think needs to be addressed. I love Chris Jenkins to this team, but I love Tavondre Sweat just a little bit more. Tavondre Sweat did play in a 4-3. Don't try to say that he doesn't fit one. He literally played in a 4-3. He's 3-4, 4-3 versatile. So you can use him in every single formation. And he's played very, very well. You keep him there in Texas. This dude's an absolute monster. At pick 43 for the Atlanta Falcons, cornerback is going to be the move. It's pretty much edge and corner that are the positions I need to target for this team. And you got some incredible ones here. You got Max Melton, who I think is super dynamic, has that dog to him. He is just under 6 foot as well. Andrew Phillips, again, talked about him as Jair Alexander. But I think that they're going to value a little bit more of the zone focus and the overall IQ of the game with Kamari Lassiter. I think his game replicates what the Falcons are actually looking for a little bit more. I think he replicates what AJ Terrell does best a little bit better than the other two guys. And you also get to keep him in Georgia, so that's cool. Some people say he ran the 4.6s. That's BS. Again, watch the tape. This dude flies. He at most, or at least ran in the 4.5s. A lot of guys said 4.5 to 4.51. It's kind of stupid how somebody didn't just take out a phone with like 120 frames per second and just record a video and just look at the frames. Do people just not do that? Like, Hello? Like, you paid thousands of dollars for these cameras and just can't do shit like that. It breaks my heart, honestly. So, it sucks to see that. But Kamari Lassiter, I think, is getting the shorter end of the stick. But luckily, he still gets the love he deserves there in ATL. Pick number 44, the Vegas Raiders went after a quarterback in round number 1. And Michael Penix. I am going to look at an offensive lineman here in round number 2. And I love Christian Haynes. I love Zach Frazier. I think Christian Haynes fits a little bit more of the role that I want next to Thayer Mumford. Great athleticism, and he's just an overall really, really good player. I think running back technically could be on the board here, corner as well. But I think offensive line, especially with the injury history of Penix, needs to be a little bit more of the focus. Pick 45 for the New Orleans Saints. Went after tackle in round number 1, which is, obviously a big assistance. But wide receiver, tight end, still a big lacking position. I love Ladd McConkey. He should be going way earlier than this, but, looking at it, the only other team that really would have taken a receiver is the Chargers, and I think they value, if they're going to go after a smaller receiver, they're going to go after Roman Wilson. So just to have that familiarity with the system. Ladd McConkey slips a little bit. He's a great player. Again, he's going to be a little more of a role player because he can't play true boundary unless he really becomes Antonio Brown. So I think that you have a little bit more, like at this point it's BPA where it's worth testing it out with Rashid Shaheed there. And, essentially you could have 3 smaller guys, but again, there are certain points where you take the best player available, and this is one of them. At pick 46 for the Indianapolis Colts, going after a corner in round 1 is obviously phenomenal. I think this team certainly could be still in that interior offensive line focus. I don't like Will Freeze that much, just my type of thing, just my personal opinion. And I like that center versatility and that just true grit of a wrestler that Zach Frazier brings to the table. At pick 47, we got the New York Giants finally on the board. They ended up taking Malik Neighbors in round 1, ended up trading that pick 39 for Brian, why am I forgetting his last name? Burns. So at pick 47, we've already addressed wide receiver. Offensive line still certainly amidst the positions to go after because you did just bring on a really good just offensive line coach in general there from the Raiders. So you do have the opportunity to go Cooper Beebe here. I think that'd be a smart move, but the corner core is complete buns. This is a dark horse team in round 1 to pass on receiver and go after a corner. So keep that in mind. And looking at the corners that I think would fit best, I think it's Max Melton and Andrew Phillips, and I love Max Melton. You keep him right there. Rutgers going from New Jersey to technically New Jersey. So let's keep him right there in that area. Max Melton goes to New York. Pick number 48, we got the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's a team that I haven't really fully agreed with their offseason acquisitions and moves, but, there's still some really solid wide receiver talent here on the board. Xavier Worthy doesn't bring, I'm trying to essentially replace Calvin Ridley with someone who could be a true wide receiver 1. And Ricky Pearsall might not be able to be a 1. He might be a 2, but he can compete with Gabe Davis and essentially be a 2A, 2B there. I honestly hope this team could bring in Mike Williams. I think that would be fine. I'd be down for that. Clemson guy to come in, right? 99% sure Mike Williams was a Clemson dude. So you could have that, certainly. I think just going after a true potential 1 is the right move here. And Ricky Pearsall does bring it. I love it. You could go after a defensive back here, but you already went after Terry and Arnold. I already addressed center and guard with your free agency acquisitions. Go after the best receiver available, and right now that appears to be Ricky Pearsall. At pick 49, Cincinnati on the board. Went after J.C. Latham in round 1. We got Bo Nix also still on the board. Got to keep that in focus, but, if a quarterback's going to fall, there's just not many teams that are going to be that desperate for one. But I could have went for New York, but their corner positions, complete cheeks. But pick 49, Bengals. I'm going to go after defensive interior here. I love Chris Jenkins to this team. BJ Hill, I think, has 1 more year left on his deal anyways, so you're going to need to potentially replace him as well. You got a $12.25 million per year deal, forgetting on the dude's name, but at nose tackle to essentially, well, I guess it's not nose tackle, but to essentially replace DJ Reader. He has $8 million guaranteed. He's going to be a 1-year rental, so at least one of those spots are going to be open. Chris Jenkins is incredible value. His dad, I believe, might have been a first-round pick as well, so you have those great bloodlines there. At pick 50 for the Eagles, somehow, some freaking way. I promise I'm not an Eagles fan. In fact, I hear about the Eagles so much, I don't like to think about the Eagles. They go Edgerrin Cooper. It is what it is, man. It is what it is. I'm not a huge fan of him falling to that point, but it is certainly possible. He's still developing as a player. I saw him fall to 84 in a mock just recently on the 7-rounder, and I love my boy Ian Cummings. That sure as hell is not going to happen. Pittsburgh's going to go Bo Nix. JK, we got our quarterbacks. Let's go. For 1 year, at the very minimum. But we went an offensive tackle, right tackle in the first round, Tyler Guyton. At this point, wide receiver, also a very good position to target. We could get Xavier Worthy because at this point, Calvin Austin is such a good receiver, though, for this system. Like, this could be a team that ends up sniping a guy in round number 3. When I'm thinking about the perfect complement to Austin and Pickens, it would be like a Jalen Polk or even a Johnny Wilson mold. And I know people don't like the Johnny Wilson idea, but even Brendan Rice. And at this point, I think there's just better value elsewhere. So you could look at the safeties right now. Absolutely. I do think that technically we could still be in the market for one of these guys who could be a fringe starting safety, linebacker. If you want to replace Cole Holcomb, you got Peyton Wilson here, but who wants to replace someone who's coming off a broken leg with someone who is injury prone? So obviously in this spot, I'd trade with a team that needs Bo Nix, but I love this opportunity for us to actually go and get somebody for the long run, and that's going to be Andrew Phillips. I'm going to actually go after my favorite corner in the draft for my favorite team, not because I just want to, but because this is actually where Andrew Phillips becomes semi-viable. He showed out in the Senior Bowl, even against 6'7" target, or 6'6", 230 target in Johnny Wilson, who I just mentioned would be a good option for the Steelers. But I ended up really popping off to me when I watched him in person, and to me, that holds a lot of value. His tape ended up backing it up. At pick number 52 for the Los Angeles Rams, this is a perfect opportunity for Bo Nix. This team, going after Leatu Latu in round 1, you could go after that day 1 impact in Rukaroro on the inside and get another, a little bit undersized defensive tackle, but you just need to go best player available. And you got, porn star Jimmy there on a 1-year deal. And then you have Stafford, who says he wants to survive a little bit longer, but, I don't know. I've been always pessimistic about, the decline physically of people's health, and Stafford's been a massive exception to that because he looks phenomenal, even coming after, all the surgeries he's had. I think at this point, it's worth bringing in Bo Nix at the very minimum. During games where you might be up by a significant margin, you still have someone who can keep you in the game. Technically, Jimmy G could too, but yeah, it's worth it at this point. It's BPA. At pick number 53 for the Philadelphia Eagles, this one is going to be Xavier Worthy. It's just a wide receiver 3. This team is looking for a wide receiver 3. You end up getting it with great value. Somehow the Eagles kick ass in this. It is what it is. The Eagles somehow always find a way to kick ass because they have great picks and they have very specific needs. At pick number 54 for the Cleveland Browns, a team that doesn't need very much. So I think I'm willing to take the best talent with the injury risk. So Peyton Wilson's exactly that. I think the Browns are in a great spot, except for probably their quarterback position, but they literally have a fully loaded quarterback position with guys who might not be good enough to win a Super Bowl, which is concerning. At pick 55, the Dolphins went after Graham Barton in round 1. Went after a corner, actually, in Kyle Fuller in free agency. That's awesome. That was a good pickup for y'all. Defensive interior, now is where I might consider it. Braden Fiske, he was mentioned with Peyton Wilson as having, in quote, ugly medicals. Until that's been disproven, I'm going to be someone who thinks that those are semi-legitimate rumors. I think Rukaroro would be interesting because he can play as a flex edge rusher as well. But this is just a class that, I'd be banking on Mason Smith being better than the majority of the rest of the class for this specific system. Other positions, I actually think wide receiver now is on the table, though. Tyreek always finds a way to get himself in trouble. It is what it is. Make your comments on that. I'm not going to, but Tyreek just finds a way to get in trouble 24/7. So I think I want to go after somebody who might have that deep threat ability. Like, I have an issue with Troy Franklin's overall motor based on how awful he performed in that gauntlet. But at the same time, the rest of the game tape is phenomenal. And I think he really could be special. He's 176, ran a really solid 40. I just hope to God that maybe he just wasn't feeling good and just didn't pay attention to that drill. because I think if he ends up being the player that we saw on the field at Oregon, he really could be something special here in Miami. At pick number 56, the Dallas Cowboys are also back on the board. Another team that could have went after Troy Franklin after releasing Michael Gallup. Linebacker, to me, still could be a target if you had Peyton Wilson on the board. Of course, Leighton Vander Esch just retired after you released him. Could see, going after another corner position. Wouldn't be a bad idea. It's always good to have a couple corners deep. Defensive interior, I already talked about it. Not a great spot in the draft at the moment. So we've addressed center, but we haven't addressed guard or tackle. And I love Cooper Beebe. Jackson Powers-Johnson and Cooper Beebe is your dream 1-2 pick, and kick Tyler Smith the tackle. That's as good as you can get. Yes, you could go after a running back, but y'all know what I think about Deuce Vaughn. I think that guy's electric. I think he could be the next Darren Sproles. I'm hoping that is the case. Pick 57, you got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Ended up going after a really solid edge rusher / defensive interior hybrid in Darius Robinson in round 1. I think corner could certainly be on the board here in round 2. Ended up getting guard / center Sua Opeta in the offseason free agency. I love the idea of bringing Jerry Jones onto this team and just, working with him in the slot / the safety. I don't think that's the route that you guys end up going. Actually, a player I really, really like is Kalen Carson. And Wake Forest ain't too far away from Tampa. So, he's used to that type of environment. He's one of the smartest corners in the class. I don't think he actually tested, but top speed might be limited a little bit. But his short range agility is awesome. So Kalen Carson's going to be the pick there. Pick 58 for the Green Bay Packers. Safety still is a concern for me. We ended up going after a linebacker with Junior Colson. They've gone after Amarius Mims. And now you get to go after the best safety in the class, which I think is Kalen Bullock. But for this team specifically, it is Cole Bishop, who tested in the 4.4s, which his only main issue was his overall speed. Everything else was really damn good with Cole Bishop. So ended up ascending into my top safety spot range with him in Bullock. At pick 59 for the Houston Texans, we've gone after defensive interior there. We did, didn't we? Yeah, Tavondre Sweat. Hello. So you got Tavondre Sweat. I think a wide receiver 3 certainly still in the books. I think that should be on the board. You got Roman Wilson here, who could be a really nice compliment, but you would be limiting the team in terms of overall size with Tank Dell. I think Jalen Polk is proper value right here. I'm not over the moon about Jalen Polk, but I know he's an instant upgrade as a blocker. He does have perfect size for what you want as a complement to Nico Collins. So you're instantly going to be having an upgrade there. And then you can actually, have Tank Dell be a little bit more pigeonholed into a role that will be best for his overall health. Jalen Polk, the selection there. At pick 60 for the Buffalo Bills, they bring in quite a few. They've brought in some dudes to check out that safety position for sure. And I think Kalen Bullock would be a good opportunity here. That being said, wide receiver still could be upgraded. You got Roman Wilson here. I think that would be great. Brandon Rice, you could get, obviously, if I'm not mistaken. Was this the era where Jerry Rice was like messing y'all up? Because that might be one of the reasons why you guys do not have 4 Super Bowls. Feel free to correct me on that. My NFL history by the years, not necessarily topped here by any stretch. But, looking at the rest of the overall roster, it really does come down to corner and wide receiver for me at this point. And the best value, unless you want to go after a pure slot, well, I do love Jarvis Brownlee, but the best value is going to be a wide receiver. So upgrading it with Roman Wilson, Johnny Wilson, Tez Walker, Brandon Rice. That's going to be the options. And honestly, I want to show some love to Brandon Rice because I think he could be a true number 2 in the NFL. He ended up testing way faster than he actually played. And that is incredible because it also might show that he has a bit more athleticism than he did there at USC. Pick 61 for Detroit went after a wide receiver. No, just kidding. Went after a corner in Kool-Aid McKinstry in round number 1. Here in round number 2 would have been another good spot for Brandon Rice. You ended up filling out your guard vacancy with Zeiler, which is awesome. I love that for you. But, when you look at the other options on the team, you could go after a more developmental edge rusher. You ended up drafting Luther Ellis, Jonah Ellis's father. I think this is the prime opportunity for getting a potential top 32 player on my board here at 61 to develop under Marcus Davenport for a year. At pick 62 for the Baltimore Ravens, went after Cooper DeJean in round number 1. In round number 2, we're getting a developmental offensive tackle here in Karan Ahmedjadjeh to compete. Ronnie Stanley, never reliably healthy. Daniel Failele, suspiciously, not a great player. Karan Ahmedjadjeh is a phenomenal player who just might need that mentorship. At pick 63, we got the Niners. And Niners in round number 1 went Chop Robinson. Hello. In here in round number 2, I'm going to go Christian Jones or Blake Fisher. Both of them phenomenal. I think Blake Fisher might be a little less in day 1 ready than Christian Jones, who performed very, very well there at the Senior Bowl. Pick 64, we got the Kansas City Chiefs ending off the draft. You could try to develop an offensive tackle here, and this is where Christian Jones, I think, would have been even more of a solid fit, but I am going to opt out of that. I would look at corner for sure because of all the rumors, but I think you still actually might end up keeping your star corner in L'Jarius Sneed. So I'm actually going to go Rukaroro here, flexible in terms of defense interior as well as edge rusher. So that is going to be the video. Thank you so much for watching and supporting the show as always. Love y'all. See you on the far side. Peace.